Hello, it's me, Tim Pool's dad. I want you to come home. This video kind of got away from me. I just wanted to make fun of Tim Pool. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to make a nice, relaxing video where I just made fun of some chump and I laugh and have a great time in the old town tonight. Let's face it, Tim is one of the most consistently wrong human beings on the planet. I figured I could, sight unseen, pick any of his videos and just point out what a ding-dong he is. I thought, in and out, quick old video, just make fun of Tim Pool and go home. So, pretty arbitrarily, I picked the video inside the no-go zone in Malmo, Sweden. And the only reason I had for that was because it was the most viewed video on his YouTube channel with 2.2 million views. And I figured, you know, like anything he does, it would be embarrassing. And he did not disappoint, because holy shit, you'll see. Two quick programming notes. Henceforth, I will refer to this man exclusively as Pim Tool, because it's much more fun to say and it seems to bother him. And I'm really trying not to use words like stupid or dumb in my videos anymore, and that's going to be a real challenge for this particular subject. I don't believe anyone is smart or dumb. I think people are curious or incurious. If you're curious about something, you'll learn a lot about it, and that'll make you confident and knowledgeable when you speak about it. Pim Tool is deeply incurious about pretty much everything. Aside from Marvel movies, which, granted, he does seem to know a lot about those.
So outside of the environmental argument, I'm looking at this from a human development circumstance, right? That if we can get look at Iron Man. In Iron Man, okay, the first movie, great movie, Tony Stark didn't necessarily invent a weapon. Obadiah Stane, he's the bad guy, he says, while trying to rid the world of weapons, you gave it its greatest one yet. And Obadiah wasn't talking about the Iron Man suit, he was talking about the arc reactor. I know, it's fiction. I like the movie. I'm sorry. But the arc reactor in Iron Man was a tremendous source of power that enabled them to power the Iron Man suit. And that's why in the second movie, you had Justin Hammer needed Vanko to, maybe a bit esoteric for everybody, but basically the second movie is industrialist brings on a Russian dude who can create the arc reactor. The point is, energy is everything.
Dude,
I will tell you something you won't like to hear, though.
I'm willing to sully myself if that's the outcome.
But I'll tell you something you're not going to want to hear, and I admit I'll call it dickish. Utilitarianism is typically the villain in most movies.
I don't care.
Yeah. So for instance, like Thanos was utilitarian, and Captain America was deontological.
I didn't.
So Thanos willing to reduce the suffering by killing, hundreds of trillions, versus the thousands of trillions, which would be living better off. So cite comic book movies.
But for anything else, he follows his knee-jerk reaction, no matter how absurd, and no amount of evidence or critical thinking can convince him to have two thoughts about one subject. So let's start with the video's title, Inside a No-Go Zone in Malmo, Sweden. And hoo boy, right off the bat, huh? Okay, so according to the police in Malmo, there are no no-go zones. They refer to some areas as problem areas because poverty in those areas leads to increased crime. The term no-go zone was applied to these areas by a journalist misquoting the police. So when the police themselves are telling you that you're overstating the danger posed by crime in an area, the police, whose jobs and funding rely on the existence of crime in their jurisdiction, may I remind you, that ought to be a red flag. But maybe Pim Tool didn't realize that. Maybe he was just being flip with the term, he heard it used somewhere. He thought, oh, it's just the thing people say, it doesn't actually mean anything. Oh, what's that in your description there, Pim? First, it is important to know that there aren't any official no-go zones. This is a term used colloquially by many people, but not most. And it certainly isn't official. Police refer to many areas as problem areas, and Rosengard is one of them. Ah, cool, man. So you knew you were being sensationalist and chose to hide that information in the description of your video rather than in the video itself. I can tell you for a fact that nobody reads the description because people constantly ask me for information I have listed in the description of my videos. And just for the record, there is a difference between an area with a lot of crime and a no-go zone. A no-go zone is somewhere where you can't go because it's unsafe. An area with a little bit more crime has a little bit more crime. But notice the weasel words in this phrasing. This is a term used colloquially by many people, but not most. This is one of Tim's very favorite rhetorical devices. Oh, this isn't something I'm saying or I'm asserting. It's just something a group of unnamed people somewhere are saying.
We're told he's very liberal. Some people say he's centrist.
People have asked that we go to Rammelsbad. People expect us to die. We've heard a bunch of interesting things. One thing we heard from someone is that Sweden has very, very great welfare benefits. Some people told us that you were a liberal in Sweden, and we've gotten different numbers from different people.
I'm looking at, I think it was 11.
11? Someone said 14, someone said 13, but I'll say we can settle on 11.
People have said that there is a huge influx in sexual crimes in Sweden. We've been told that it's simply because Sweden has a wider law. There are people saying that coming, not even specifying the area we go to. Like if you're just going Rosengard, it's so bad. There's a lot of people who think that you'll get robbed here, that there's a lot of sex crimes or anything like that. That's not the case.
No.
That's something we haven't heard from people in Malmo. They kind of wave it off like it's no big deal. In the past 2 months, there were, I think, 4 murders. Some people said 3.
That's a way of lending credibility to a statement without saying anything that can be fact-checked or challenged. How are you going to prove that people aren't saying something? I can do that too. Lots of people are telling me Pim Tool is an embarrassment to journalism. I've heard people talking about how Pim Tool is very clearly trying to push a conservative social agenda through his dishonest reporting. We've heard reports that Pim Tool's beanie conceals a krang embedded in his head that gives him orders. These types of statements don't meet the editorial standards of a Wikipedia article, let alone serious journalism. Speaking of bad journalism, this video begins with a leading question.
So do you think that there's been more violent crime?
At the last 2 years, maybe.
Do you think that has anything to do with refugees?
Yeah.
Just so you know, just so you don't come away with the wrong idea and assume this is going to be some sort of neutral, fact-based reporting. Nope! We got to let you know, first and foremost, right away, we are explicitly creating a narrative. The crime here is because of refugees. This lady thinks so there you go. Tim fucks around for a little bit, then meets up with Nils Carlson, a deputy mayor of Malmo. Right off the bat, he poisons the well. Just so you know, we've been told this guy is a pinko stinko.
We're on our way to meet with Nils Carlson, who's a deputy mayor. We're told he's very liberal. Some people say he's centrist.
He calls this his official minder tour. Ha ha ha. Just kidding, I'm being facetious. Because it's the official view of the government, because you're talking to the deputy mayor, the mouthpiece of the totalitarian Swedish state. He's obviously going to be led around the city by the nose and shown only what the government wants him to see. Except, he tells Carlson where he wants to go, and Carlson's like, yeah, okay. He works so hard to let you know ahead of time. Don't listen to what this guy says. I wonder why that might be.
The real violent crimes have increased in Malmö, while the other crimes have been at a more stable level or even decreased.
Well,
so there is a problem in Malmö.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it has anything to do with Sweden bringing in refugees?
No, I don't.
Carlson doesn't think crime has anything to do with Sweden bringing in refugees. Weird. Weird, isn't it? That he chose to start the video with the lady saying she does think it has something to do with refugees, but the actual subject of the interview, the guy he is explicitly there to talk to, says no and doesn't make the opening stinger for some reason. That's weird, isn't it? And I just want to note this exchange because it kind of gives the game away a little bit.
But I find it's much more useful to talk about the problems if you want to solve them, because if we cover them up or try to look away, then they will still be around.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's what a lot of conservatives have said in the U.S. That simply acting like the problem isn't there won't fix them.
Well, that is true. I'll give them that.
Liberals are always saying we should just ignore our problems, and conservatives are like, nah, they won't go away if we do that. Except climate change and children in cages and the rainforests burning and police brutality and mass incarceration, racial profiling, increases in hate crimes, and all of the crimes done by the crime president and any sexual assaults anyone he appoints to office might do. Other than that though, no, we can't ignore our problems. Unlike liberals who want to ignore the no-go areas in Malmö, Sweden, just because they don't exist. Typical. One thing that strikes me about Pim Tool's interview with Carlson is that Carlson never actually denies that refugees are committing crimes. He talks about the socioeconomic status of refugees in Sweden, the language barrier, and how that might incentivize them to commit more crimes because, you know, refugees are people and sometimes people commit crimes. He places the blame for Malmö's escalating violent crime rate on gangs because that's what the police told him, apparently. The minute Carlson is out of the room, though, Pim Tool claims that Carlson admitted he was biased. He admitted it himself, and it was obvious anyway because he's very liberal.
You know, Nils, he said he's biased, and you know that that's a very liberal perspective, so take that into account. We've got more interviews to do, we've got more experts to meet, and this is a daily thing, so, you know, expect more.
Now, I've watched this video a few times, and he didn't call himself biased. I don't know if maybe he did that in conversation with Pim Tool, but if he did, it's not in the video. So by all means, correct me if I'm wrong, but it does seem to suggest that Carlson saying he is a liberal itself is an admission of bias to Pim Tool. Now, I'm not a liberal. I tend to disagree with liberals quite heavily, but I wouldn't exactly call liberalism a bias. It's a perspective, but it's kind of irresponsible to just categorically dismiss anyone because they disagree with you politically. And I guess this is the point where we have to talk about this. Pim Tool identifies as a liberal. That's not true. That's a grift to make himself seem neutral when he criticizes liberals. And if you fall for it, you're kind of politically illiterate. In this video alone, he name drops American conservatives as the only ones willing to combat societal problems and openly dismisses the point of view of anyone he deems too liberal. Just take a look at the videos on his YouTube channel. Chick-fil-A bends the knee to the leftist outrage mob. The right faces massive cultural disadvantage. The left is trapped in a paranoid delusion state, and it's getting worse. Impeachment hearing backfires on Democrats, potentially proving Trump right. Even CNN notes problems. This is essentially the same grift that wieners like Sargon or Dave Rubin have tried to pull. They only ever criticize the left, or what they consider left and what I might consider to be centrist, but claim to be on the left, you know, so you can trust them because they're on the other team, and that's where their sympathies lie, obviously. So you can trust their criticism because it works against their biases, actually, you know? And that makes perfect sense if you view politics as a team sport. I might agree with everything you say, but I'm on the other team, so naturally, that's what I want to believe, and I would love to agree with them. It's just that everything you're saying makes so much sense that I am forced against my will to agree with you. That's not how politics works. You're on whatever side you agree with. Have some fucking sense. Anyway, back to making fun of the video. Just so you know, Malmö is experiencing an unprecedented crime wave. Tim mentions he himself witnessed a crime.
The interesting thing is when we first came to this spot, the people here told us they had just experienced some kind of crime and the police were on their way, but we're told it wasn't a priority. They asked us not to speak about it, but at least, you know, I'd like to bring it up to let you know that this is the area we're in and this is what we experienced.
A crime? That could be anything. An assault, a murder, perhaps some sort of elaborate, sexy jewel heist. But probably not, though, because if the type of crime was interesting or scary, he'd probably mention that. It's probably like graffiti or loitering or a noise complaint or some shit like that, because the police say it's not a high priority. The purpose of this video is to scaremonger about refugees committing crimes. The first 10 seconds of the video make that clear. If there was something scary happening, he'd say so. But he just calls it a crime, doesn't say what it is. Then he goes on to stay with a family in Malmö and talks to them about their situation. And he makes fun of the idea that the area is poor because the apartment he's in is nice and has nice floors. Nice try, you biased libs, trying to blame crime on socioeconomic status. I went to that area and I saw hardwood. How could these new refugees be living in poverty if this family, with a refugee in it from another refugee crisis 20 years ago, isn't living in poverty? Checkmate. But then the moment we've all been waiting for, the lady from the beginning, the only person in this video who thinks the problem has anything to do with refugees, who also mentions that she's not really familiar with the issue and it doesn't affect her personally.
Notice anything outside at night? Is any violence? I mean, the one murder of the 16-year-old boy, that was down at the Amilalsgatan, the street down there. So, I mean, we had the sirens on our wall.
Oh,
so,
wow.
I mean, yeah. It was close, and that was, of course, frightening, but that's about it. I think.
Have there been any other incidents like that, or any kind of, maybe not a murder, but have you seen robberies or gang activity?
No, not at all. I mean, there was one 14-year-old that went that had like a pretty loud cracker, you know, like
Firecracker?
Firecracker, yeah. Yeah, it's embarrassing somehow that people are even talking about it like that without knowing. I don't know.
Hi. Hi there.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Are there people saying that coming, you know, not even specifying the area we go to? Like, if you're just going Rosengard, it's so bad, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it isn't bad. It has been...
Vad ska jag säga?
Det har varit mycket bättre innan. Mycket bättre.
Bättre?
Det har varit bättre på
Det var
Rosengård.
bättre innan? Okay.
Ja.
Yeah, she thinks it was better before.
Before.
How long did you live here, Almedina?
24 years.
All right.
So do you think that there's been more violent crime?
At the last 2 years, maybe.
Do you think that has anything to do with refugees?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Does it scare you? Does that bother you?
No, not that much, because I think that... Johan, du får
Ja, vad
hjälpa
ska jag
mig igen.
säga?
Jag fastnar.
Ja, vad ska jag säga?
Alltså, jag tror det är mycket, alltså det här med kriminaliteten, där de själva liksom, det här är mycket med hedersmord och mycket sånt här som försiggår. Alltså att vi som bor här behöver inte vara så rädda för detta här.
Nej. Yeah, she's kind of saying like the crimes are not concerning us really. It's like honor crimes maybe, things that goes on in the world that we don't know about. And it's so few, I mean, it's so narrow that we don't really feel like it affects us in our daily life.
Oddly, Pim Tool doesn't ask her about her political leanings. I guess they're not really a sign of bias when the person you're speaking to gives the answer you were hoping to get. He ends the video, once again, reminding the audience not to listen to Nils Carson because he's so clearly biased.
We did the interview with Nils today, and you know, he's obviously very liberal, but we want to come and experience, you know, Rosengard, so, you know, very grateful for Johan to coming and inviting us into his home.
Little does he know that all of you are biased. All of you frail humans think that you see things as they are, but you do not. You see things as your eyeballs deign them to be. Hello and welcome to the Eyeball Zone. Here in the Eyeball Zone, I give smaller lefty projects some good old-fashioned eyeballing, no explanation required. And now it's time for an abrupt tonal shift because the subject matter of what I'm about to recommend is very serious. YouTuber Faye reached out to me to ask for advice about how to deal with harassment she was getting on a video she made, defending herself and her brother from eugenicist arguments and straw men about the neurodiversity movement. Her video is deeply moving. It deals with some pretty sad realities that autistic and other neurodivergent people face, including torture masquerading as negative reinforcement and sexual assault. It's extremely comprehensive. I personally learned a lot from watching it, and I cried more than once. I don't normally ask for things like this, but I'd like for you to watch the video, and if you feel so inclined, please leave her a positive comment. I would like very much to drown out the ignorant and cruel people harassing her over this astoundingly informed work. And if you're disgusted by eugenics and ableism in general, please let her know that you're willing to listen to her and that you have her back. If you'd like to be featured here in the Eyeball Zone, please send an email to thoughtslimeeditor@gmail.com with the word eyeballs somewhere in the subject line. And now, we return to mocking Pim Tool. When I was imagining how this video would go, I thought I'd just make fun of the top few videos in terms of views on Pim Tool's channel, but now I'm really interested in this supposed no-go zone in Sweden, so I had to know more about the vicious crimes he witnessed. So I had to watch his follow-up video, Getting Escorted Out of the No-Go Zone. Note the quotation marks, because, you know, he wasn't escorted out, and it isn't a no-go zone. So he's walking around with this dude, Chang Frick, more on him later, just seeing the shopping plaza in Rinkeby, where people are walking around with their baby strollers, scary stuff, out of nowhere. The police tell him that he's gotta go, because upwards of 50 dudes are coming, and people all around them are masking up, and who knows what could go wrong. Now, we don't see any of this conversation, it happens off camera, but it's pretty scary, right? Then later he explains a bit more. Turns out those up to 50 guys who might show up thing was the police talking about if they arrested some guy, maybe some other people would show up in protest of that.
are you saying maybe we should just go to our car? He's like, that's my tip for you, maybe. And I said, okay. And the cop said, look, maybe if we arrest one of these guys, there could be 50 more in a few minutes with stones. And I was like, okay, so we should just go to the car. And he said, yes.
He mentions that because the police officially denied, like, most of the things that he said. When the cameras were turned off, because the police didn't want to be filmed because of the politics. But off camera, they did mention they agree with the things Pim Tool thinks.
We filmed a couple things, as you saw, and decided to talk to the police. I didn't know if they spoke English, but one of the officers recognized me. I had a pretty good conversation with him. He said, immigrants, they're overrepresented in crime, these poor areas, they have more crime, but he told me he felt like they could do a lot of good there and that it was, something he liked doing.
They denied officially that the atmosphere at the time was threatening, and also mentioned that the people putting on masks were doing so because they didn't want to be filmed. They weren't Antifa super soldiers. They just were covering their face so they wouldn't be filmed by the guys with the camera. Also, he mentions he brought up the idea of the police following him out. Even in his version of events, which there's plenty of reason to dispute given that the police deny his allegations, he mentions he brought it up.
Okay, so we should just go to the car. And he said yes. And then I said, are you going to follow us out? What are you? And he said, I think that would be a smart idea. And so the police got in the car and they followed us out.
So to sum up, the police told Pim Tool that if they arrested someone for putting on a mask because they didn't want to be filmed, some guys might show up and start shit, and that was enough to make him fear for his life. Just look at his face. That's the state of journalism in Stockholm. How frightening. You can't walk around with a camera without people trying not to be filmed. He was just there, in his own words, doing journalism, as journalists do. And look how small his camera is. He wants you to know it's a very small camera. Just look at how it compares to his hand when he holds his hand a foot in front of it. He's giving you the most accurate possible view of the camera with his fisheye lens.
Our camera is not particularly large. Let me just show you the camera that we use, right? So this is the Canon XF105. It's relatively small, right? So I just want to make sure that I'm getting an accurate view of this camera so you can see what we're working with. That's how big my hand is, right? This is me holding the camera, right?
Who the fuck cares about the size of your camera? What the fuck does that have to do with anything? Like, if your point is that it shouldn't be obvious that you're a journalist from the camera, okay. Why? It's clearly a bigger camera than anyone who didn't work in media would have. I mean, I agree that you're not a journalist, but I think people would have to watch your videos to figure that out. Or do you think that, like, people are okay with being filmed if the camera is small enough? Do you think it's so small that nobody would have noticed you were filming? Because it's not. It's a video camera. What the fuck is the point of any of this? The whole tangent about your camera? What are you trying to prove here? Now, why on earth would people not want to get filmed? I mean, here they are with a real, actual journalist who's not at all a fraud, and you're just walking the streets with some guy named Chang Frick who runs an online newspaper called News Today, but like in Swedish, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Well, who's this guy? Tim calls him a potentially controversial figure.
Okay, we had no plans. We were not prepared. We were not planning on doing anything. We had met up with Chang because we had heard he was potentially an interesting or controversial figure, and in doing any journalism, we're going to reach out to as many people as possible. And Chang showed us lots of footage from in the no-go zones, and so look, if we're going to go into these areas that we're told are dangerous, it's always good to have someone who knows the area.
Doesn't say why though. What could be controversial about this nice young man? Can you guess? Perhaps it's his deep ties to the Sweden Democrats, a far-right nationalist party founded by literal neo-Nazis. The guys who encouraged him to start his newspaper and registered the domain for him. Maybe it's that. Maybe that's the thing. All the ties to the Nazi-adjacent political party. But you know what's weird? Pim Tool doesn't even bring it up. Not even once. He doesn't even give the guy's surname. It's almost like he doesn't want you to Google it. Some might call that abject cowardice. For example, me, I would. You're a coward. Just so we're all keeping up, fuck you, Nils Carlson. You're a liberal. We can't take your words seriously. What's that, Mr. Frick? You and your far-right nationalist pals have some ideas? Well, don't be shy. Just because you're a little bit controversial. As a journalist, it's my duty to ensure that I'm speaking with everyone on all sides of the political spectrum, and also not informing my audience about who you are and why I'm talking to you. Luckily, Pim Tool is brave enough to head back into not danger. Part 3, Pim goes bowling in this dangerous no-go zone. He then meets up with 3 random guys for a drink because there are 3 guys he met, so finally we're going to get the real story from 3 guys. Turns out, everybody, that these fucking politicians are just bringing in all these immigrants and refugees to prop the economy up.
Are the refugees, it's not a humanitarian thing, they don't care about them, but do you think they see it as an opportunity to make money or to prop the economy up or what?
Prop the economy up, yeah. Especially
Listen, everything is about harvesting the system, all right? You need to harvest everything. When you kill an animal, you use the skin, you use the bones, you use the meat, you use the what do you call it? The liver, the heart and stuff,
yeah,
the organs, everything. You don't leave anything out, all right?
Wait, why is that bad? Isn't it good for the economy to be propped up? You see, Sweden manufactures lots of weapons, and they arm dictators, and that creates refugees. And then these corrupt politicians get this. They get all the money from having the refugees in the country. You know, like all that immigrant money that you get when you bring in refugees, like all the money that you get. The thing is, it's profitable for you to bring in refugees to your country, and so it's corrupt to do, and that's how it's wrong. 2 of the guys Tim is palling around with here are refugees themselves from previous conflicts. They don't say that immigrants commit more crimes. They mostly talk about how the system treats refugees really, really poorly, which could incentivize crime. Pim keeps trying to pivot the conversation into how the refugees are the guys doing all the crimes. And the guys are talking about how shitty the situation is for the refugees. This guy on the right, though, he loves Trump. He thinks Trump is doing a bang-up job. He's the only one on the world stage doing a good job. And Pim really wants you to know that. He specifically calls it out twice.
A lot of people would be surprised to hear that there's refugees who like Trump's policies.
Wow, I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear that this refugee from a different, not from the same refugee crisis, from a different refugee crisis, thinks Trump is doing a great job. He also mentions at one point that he doesn't think Bashar al-Assad is a dictator, a statement which requires no clarification.
You don't solve the problems there. You start the problems there. You end the problems there. What is the West doing down there? And talking about Assad and talking that he's a dictator, sending in ISIL, beheading people. How many people have died there? How many?
Yeah, whatever. Tell me more about Trump. Pim ends his Swedish adventure by saying that he thinks the problems in Sweden are exaggerated, but also very real, because you can't walk down the street in Rinkeby with a camera. Look at what happened when he tried to do that. He could only do it twice with absolutely nothing happening. It's out of control. Pim Tool is a frustrating person. He seldom lies, but often mischaracterizes things. Like, he clearly knows that there aren't no-go zones in Sweden. He goes to the places he calls no-go zones, and it's fine, and nothing happens. Still, all 3 of these videos have the words no-go zone in the title. He only clarifies that they aren't actually officially designated no-go zones by anyone in one video. And even then, it's not in the video itself, but in the description. Oh yeah, the police told me that things could go wrong at any minute and 50 guys could show up. And people are putting on masks, so they could jump me at any moment, because why else would someone cover up their faces when me and my far-right nationalist pal are pointing a camera at them? The first sentence in the description of any of Tim's videos, written in all caps so that you don't miss it, is "Support journalism! Donate to Patreon link withheld!" And just the grapes on this guy. Not support my work, not support me, but support journalism. And that rankles me, because what he's doing in these videos is shitty journalism. He's constantly leading his subjects to frame a narrative that he arrived there with. He often exaggerates events, leaves out information, and preemptively discredits anyone whose opinion he doesn't like? That isn't journalism. It's disinformation. It's deliberate disinformation, and it's lazy disinformation. It's just some chumpa-dump walking around the street asking people leading questions and then telling you how to interpret their answers. It's pathetic, and I don't understand how anyone, let alone 2.2 million people, can watch this shit. Ha, that felt good. It feels good to make fun of Pim Tool. Try it at home. It's good for stress, it's good for high blood pressure. Ask your doctor if making fun of Pim Tool is right for you, and your doctor will be like, yeah, it is. That dude's a wiener. This dopey little hat. Fuck that guy. Hey everyone, it's me, Thought Slime. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning right now, and I just realized I forgot to record an outro to this video where I do all my calls to action, so I'm doing that now in the middle of the night. Why don't you go ahead and check out patreon.com/thoughtslime if you want to support journalism. That's the place you gotta go. You can catch me streaming every 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursdays. Right now I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn. That game's kind of boring. Anyway, if you want more Thought Slime in your life, and honestly, who could blame you? Check out youtube.com/scaredycatstv where I talk about scary movies. Just did a review of The Lighthouse. That movie has more fart jokes in it than you might think there are. This is the end of this YouTube video. Thank you for watching. Fuck Tim Pool. He wears a dopey little hat. I don't like him.